In a quiet rural town, a group of arrogant men eye Otis Freeman's farm like easy prey. An old, heavy-set black man they dismiss as weak and slow. They don't know he's a retired Navy SEAL, a warrior shaped by decades of elite training and unshakable discipline. Beneath Otis's calm exterior lies a lifetime of strength and strategy. As threats escalate and violence looms, these men underestimate the fierce protector guarding his family's legacy. What starts as a land dispute soon ignites into a high-stakes battle for justice, forcing Otis to fight not just for his farm, but for his very survival. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The morning sun painted long shadows across Otis Freeman's farm as he made his way through the dewy grass. His weathered overalls stretched across his broad frame, and despite his size, he moved with a deliberate grace that spoke of hidden strength. The wooden fence posts needed mending in places, and the old red barn's paint had begun to peel. But there was pride in how he maintained every inch of his family's land. Otis carried 2 heavy feed buckets, one in each hand, his thick fingers wrapped firmly around the metal handles. The chickens recognized his approaching footsteps and rushed to greet him, clucking excitedly around his boots. He scattered the feed in practiced arcs, watching as the birds pecked eagerly at their breakfast. "Morning, ladies," he said softly, his deep voice barely above a whisper. The gentle tone seemed at odds with his imposing presence, but it matched the peaceful atmosphere of the early hour. From the farmhouse porch, Shirley Freeman watched her husband with knowing eyes. She held 2 steaming mugs of coffee, her gray-streaked hair tied back neatly. "You're up early again," she called out, descending the worn wooden steps. Otis turned, a slight smile warming his face. "Sun doesn't wait for anyone, Miss Shirley." He set down the buckets and accepted the coffee, their fingers brushing in a familiar gesture of affection. Shirley's keen eyes surveyed the property alongside him. "Thompson's boy rode past again yesterday. 3rd time this week." Otis nodded slowly, taking a careful sip. "Wade's people trying to send a message, I expect." "They're getting bolder," Shirley said, her lawyer's mind already working through scenarios. Ever since that new development project was announced, the couple stood in comfortable silence, watching the sunrise paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Their land stretched out before them, 60 acres that had been in Otis's family for 3 generations, bought with blood, sweat, and determination after emancipation. "Got that town meeting today," Otis reminded her, moving toward the barn where the horses waited. Shirley followed, her presence steady and supportive. Inside the barn, Otis began measuring out oats for the horses. His movements were methodical, practiced over decades. "They'll try something," he said matter-of-factly. "Wade's been itching for a confrontation." Shirley leaned against a post, her coffee forgotten. "You think they'll make their move at the meeting?" "Seems likely." Otis's voice remained even, but his eyes hardened slightly. "Public space, witnesses. They'll want to make a show of it." The morning passed in their usual routine, feeding animals, checking fences, discussing the day's work. But there was an underlying tension, like static before a storm. Both felt it, neither needed to name it. By late afternoon, they drove their old pickup truck into town. The community center parking lot was already full, mostly with newer vehicles that spoke of money and status. Otis and Shirley entered together, heads held high despite the sideways glances and whispered comments. The meeting room was stuffy with too many bodies and not enough air conditioning. Plastic chairs scraped against linoleum as people settled in. Near the front, Wade Grissom and his crew occupied an entire row, their presence impossible to ignore. Wade was younger than Otis by decades, with close-cropped hair and a perpetual sneer. His gang wore their prejudice like badges of honor, Confederate flag patches, provocative slogans, and an air of barely contained violence. The meeting began with ordinary business, budget reports, road maintenance schedules, upcoming events. But when the topic turned to the new development project, Wade stood up, his chair scraping loudly. "Before we go any further," he announced, his voice carrying clearly across the room, "we need to address the elephant in the room." His eyes fixed deliberately on Otis. "Some folks here are sitting on land they've got no right to." A tense silence fell over the room. Otis remained seated, his expression neutral, but his massive hands rested calmly on his knees. Wade continued, growing bolder with each word. "My grandfather sold that land to proper farmers, not squatters claiming some ancient right. We've got documentation that proves it." "Your grandfather's documentation wouldn't hold up in any court," Shirley spoke up, her voice sharp with legal authority. "The Freeman family has clear title going back to 1866. "Nobody asked you, woman," one of Wade's crew spat out. "We're talking about real property rights here." Otis finally stood, his movement slow and deliberate. His size seemed to fill the room, though his voice remained quiet. "My great-grandfather purchased that land fair and square. We've worked it, lived on it, made it prosper for over 150 years. Wade stepped closer, his face reddening. "You people always think you can take what isn't yours. That land should be part of the new development. Progress, you know? But you're holding everyone back, sitting there like a fat old fool who doesn't know when his time's up." The room crackled with tension. Some people shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while others nodded in agreement with Wade. Otis simply looked at the younger man, his expression unchanged, but something in his steady gaze made Wade's swagger falter slightly. "The deeds are registered at the courthouse," Otis said evenly. "Anyone who wants to check is welcome to do so. Now, unless you have actual business for this meeting, I believe we were discussing the road maintenance schedule." The drive home from the meeting was quiet, with only the crunch of gravel under tires breaking the evening silence. Otis parked their old pickup in its usual spot beside the farmhouse, but neither he nor Shirley moved to get out right away. "They're not going to let this go," Shirley said finally, her hands folded in her lap. The setting sun cast long shadows through the windshield, highlighting the worry lines around her eyes. Otis nodded slowly. "No, they're not." He turned off the engine, but kept his large hands on the steering wheel. "Wade's been waiting for an excuse. That development project just gave him one." Inside the farmhouse, Shirley moved through their familiar kitchen, pulling out ingredients for dinner. Her movements were sharp, precise, a reflection of her years as an attorney. "We should document everything," she said, chopping vegetables with practiced efficiency. "Every interaction, every threat. Build a paper trail." "Already started," Otis replied. He pulled a small notebook from his overall pocket. "Times, dates, witnesses. Just like you taught me." The ghost of a smile crossed his face. The screen door creaked, followed by 3 quick knocks. A familiar pattern. "Come on in, Dre," Otis called out without turning around. DeAndre Willis stepped into the kitchen, his young face tight with tension. At 21, he carried himself with the wary alertness of someone who'd learned early to watch his back. "Heard about what happened at the meeting," he said, accepting the glass of sweet tea Shirley offered. "Word's spreading fast." "Pull up a chair, son," Otis said, gesturing to their worn kitchen table. "You look like you got something on your mind." Dre sat, his fingers drumming restlessly against the glass. "People are talking about forming groups, watching each other's properties. The younger folks, we're tired of taking this kind of disrespect." Shirley paused in her cooking, exchanging a knowing look with Otis. "And what do you think about that?" she asked carefully. "I think—" Dre struggled with the words. "I think I'm angry. All the time. My granddaddy faced this same garbage, and now here we are, still fighting for what's already ours." His voice cracked slightly. How do you stay so calm, Big O? How do you just let them talk to you like that? Otis leaned forward, his massive frame making the kitchen chair creak. Who says I'm letting them do anything? His voice was quiet, but carried weight. There's a difference between keeping calm and being passive. One's a choice, the other's surrender. He stood up, motioning for Dre to follow. They walked out onto the back porch, where the evening air was cooling. Otis pointed to seemingly random spots around the property. See those new fence posts, motion sensors, those security lights, connected to a silent alarm? That old shed? Houses 4 high-definition cameras with night vision. Dre's eyes widened slightly. You've been preparing. Since the day I bought this place, Otis confirmed. Being ready isn't the same as being afraid. It's about respect for yourself, your family, your legacy. Inside, they could hear Shirley on the phone, her voice carrying the sharp authority that had once commanded courtrooms. Yes, I need to speak with Marcus at the county records office. Yes, I'll hold. The sun had nearly set now, painting the sky in deep purples and blues. Dre watched as Otis methodically checked each lock, each security measure. You really think they'll try something? Already have, Otis replied, pointing to fresh tire tracks near the property line. Been driving by, testing responses, looking for weak spots. He paused, considering his next words carefully. When you've seen as much as I have, you learn to read the signs. Wade's crew, they're building themselves up to something. Each threat, each drive-by, it's like a countdown. As if on cue, the distant rumble of engines broke the evening quiet. Headlights appeared on the access road, then quickly went dark. Otis's hand fell on Dre's shoulder, guiding him inside. Time for you to head home, son. Take the back road. But I could help, Dre started to protest. Best help you can give is being smart, being safe. Otis cut him off firmly. Go on now. After Dre left, Otis moved silently through the darkening house. Shirley watched from the kitchen as he pulled on a dark jacket and checked something in his pocket. Be careful, she said simply. Always am. He kissed her cheek and slipped out into the night. From his hidden position in the old oak tree stand, Otis had a clear view of his property. The Grissom gang's trucks had parked just out of sight of the main road. 5 figures moved through the darkness, carrying cans of spray paint and what looked like baseball bats. They started with the fence posts, smashing them methodically. Spray paint cans hissed as they worked, leaving crude symbols and racial slurs in garish colors. Wade supervised from the middle of the group, his voice carrying in whispers across the quiet field. Send the message, he urged his crew. Show them what happens when they don't know their place. Otis remained motionless in his hiding spot, his expression unreadable in the darkness. His hand rested near his pocket, where a small device recorded everything. Each crash of splintering wood, each hateful word spray-painted across his property, all of it documented, just as Shirley had taught him. Dawn broke over Otis's farm, revealing the full extent of the previous night's vandalism. The morning dew mixed with splintered wood and neon paint, creating an ugly contrast against the peaceful landscape. Otis walked the property line methodically, his work boots leaving heavy impressions in the wet grass. He paused at each damaged section, taking photos with his phone. The racial slurs sprayed across his fence posts made his jaw tighten, but his movements remained deliberate and calm. From the farmhouse porch, Shirley watched her husband work, phone pressed to her ear. Marcus, I know it's early, but this can't wait, she said, her voice carrying the authority of her courtroom days. We need to file a police report and get ahead of this. Yes, I understand the backlog. No, that's not acceptable. Otis looked up as Dre's old Chevy pulled up the dirt drive. The young man jumped out, his face darkening at the sight of the destruction. Man, this is wrong, he said, jogging over to help. "Let me grab some tools from my truck." "Appreciate it," Otis nodded, already sorting through his own toolbox. He pulled out a level and some fresh lumber he'd stored in the barn. "We'll start with the corner posts." They hit those hardest. As they worked, Otis's movements revealed a precision that seemed at odds with his large frame. He measured twice, cut once, and positioned each new post with tactical consideration. "Sightlines," he murmured, almost to himself, adjusting an angle slightly. "What's that?" Dre asked, wiping sweat from his brow. "Nothing important," Otis replied, but his eyes scanned the tree line with practiced efficiency. He reached into his pocket, checking a small device that looked like a phone, but wasn't. Shirley brought them water around midday, her face tight with frustration. "Legal aid's backed up for weeks," she reported. "And the police? They're looking into it." The sarcasm in her voice was sharp enough to cut. "They ain't gonna do nothing," Dre said bitterly, accepting the water. "Same as always. They'll do something when we have enough evidence," Otis said quietly. He pulled out his phone, showing them the morning's photos. Everything documented, time-stamped with GPS coordinates. He pointed to small markers he'd placed near each damaged section. "And those are survey stakes. Proves exactly where our property line is." The day wore on, hot and heavy. By sunset, they'd replaced most of the damaged sections. Otis insisted on finishing the work himself as darkness approached, sending Dre home despite his protests. "Something don't feel right," Dre said before leaving. "Let me stay. Help keep watch." "Best help you can give is staying clear," Otis replied firmly. "Trust me on this." Inside the farmhouse, Shirley paced the kitchen. "They're escalating," she said, watching headlights pass on the distant road. "Each attack gets bolder." Otis nodded, checking something on his tablet. Security camera feeds showed multiple angles of their property. "Got movement on the back 40, he said calmly. 3 vehicles, lights off, coming in from the south access road." Shirley's hands clenched. "Should we call the police?" "Already did," Otis replied, his voice steady. "Anonymous tip about suspicious vehicles. They'll take their time responding, but it'll be on record." He stood up, moving with surprising quietness for his size. "Stay inside, away from windows. Call that news contact of yours, the one with the drone camera." The first firebomb crashed through the barn window at 10:47 p.m. The explosion lit up the night, followed quickly by 2 more. Flames leaped into the darkness as whooping voices carried across the field. Gunshots cracked the air, sharp amateur shots that found targets among Otis's livestock. From his concealed position in the reinforced pump house, Otis watched through military-grade night vision goggles. Wade Grissom's voice carried clearly through his directional microphone. "Burn it all! Let's see them try to keep this place now!" The gang moved with drunk confidence, unaware of the infrared cameras recording their every move. They didn't notice the small devices Otis had installed that morning, capturing crystal-clear audio of their threats and celebrations. Inside the farmhouse, Shirley maintained her composure, speaking clearly into her phone. "Yes, I'm watching it happen right now. Multiple perpetrators, armed, committing arson and destruction of property. Yes, we have video evidence. No, I'm safe." The heat from the burning barn painted everything in hellish orange light. More gunshots rang out, followed by the pained sounds of dying animals. Through it all, Otis remained perfectly still, his breathing controlled and steady. His large hands moved with practiced efficiency over familiar equipment, communications gear, surveillance monitors, and other tools that seemed out of place on a simple farm. The gang's attack grew more frenzied. They broke windows, shot out security lights, and spray-painted more slurs across the farmhouse walls. Wade Grissom's voice rose above the chaos. "Come on out, old man! Face us like a man! if you got the guts. But Otis stayed hidden, watching, recording, preparing. His expression remained neutral as he activated a series of switches on his belt. Around the property, hidden systems hummed to life, unnoticed by the intruders who thought they had the upper hand. The night air thickened with smoke as Otis moved like a ghost through his property. His large frame melted into shadows with practiced ease, each step calculated and silent, despite his size. The burning barn cast dancing shadows that worked to his advantage, creating shifting patterns of darkness, perfect for concealment. Through his night vision goggles, he watched Wade's men spread out, drunk on their own success. They'd made every amateur mistake in the book. No proper watch, no coordination, and worst of all, no respect for their surroundings. Their flashlight beams swept wildly, creating perfect blind spots. Otis touched his throat mic. "Shirley, stay low. It's starting." His wife's acknowledgement came as a single click in his earpiece. The first tripwire activated near the old tractor shed. A simple device, fishing line connected to a row of tin cans, but in the tense atmosphere, the sudden clatter sent two gang members spinning around, firing blindly into the darkness. Their shots went wide, exactly as Otis had predicted. "What was that?" one shouted, voice cracking. "Jimmy? That you?" Otis pressed a button on his belt. Across the property, small speakers he'd hidden that morning came to life, broadcasting recorded sounds, footsteps in dry leaves, twigs snapping, whispered voices. The gang members' heads whipped around, trying to track multiple threats that didn't exist. Basic psychological warfare, Otis whispered to himself, remembering training exercises from decades ago. Disorient and divide. Wade Grissom's voice carried across the yard. "Stop jumping at shadows, you idiots! Find that old man!" Otis moved to his first target, a heavy-set man with a shotgun who'd separated from the others. The gang member never saw the cord at ankle height. He went down hard, shotgun clattering away. Before he could shout, Otis's massive arm wrapped around his throat in a perfect blood choke. Seconds later, the man was unconscious. "Sleep it off," Otis muttered, zip-tying the man's hands and removing his weapons. He clicked his radio twice. Shirley would understand to mark the location for police evidence later. The gang's confidence began to crack. Their shots came faster, more erratic. Otis triggered more distractions. A floodlight here, a recorded animal sound there. Each time they fired at nothing, wasting ammunition and revealing their positions. "Something ain't right," one of them called out. "Wade, this feels wrong." Otis smiled grimly. Fear was setting in. He moved to his next position, deliberately stepping on a branch. The crack echoed through the night. 3 gang members spun toward the sound, but Otis was already elsewhere, circling behind them. A flashbang he'd positioned earlier detonated on cue, followed by smoke grenades rolling across the ground. The chemicals weren't dangerous, but the gang didn't know that. They stumbled, coughing and cursing, perfect targets for Otis's next phase. He picked them off systematically. A precise strike to a knee here, a shoulder lock there. Each takedown was controlled, designed to disable without causing permanent damage. His SEAL training emphasized efficiency over brutality. "He's everywhere!" someone screamed. The night dissolved into chaos as gang members fired at shadows and ran into each other. Wade Grissom stood by his truck, trying to rally his men. "Stand your ground, you cowards. It's just one old man." Otis's voice, electronically distorted through hidden speakers, filled the air. "You boys picked the wrong farm." The words seemed to come from everywhere at once. The psychological effect was immediate. 2 more gang members broke for their trucks. Otis let them go. They'd spread the word better than any warning he could give. Then came the moment he'd planned for. Billy Grissom, Wade's younger brother, stepped right into Otis's most elaborate trap. The snare, built from heavy-duty cable, caught his leg and yanked him upward. He dangled 6 feet off the ground, screaming in pain and terror. "Billy!" Wade's shout carried real fear now. "Where are you?" Otis triggered his last set of lights, powerful LEDs that created a disorienting strobe effect. In the chaos, he approached Billy's hanging form. The young man's eyes widened as Otis emerged from the smoke like a nightmare, his massive silhouette backlit by the burning barn. "Please," Billy whimpered, "don't kill me." "Not my style," Otis replied calmly, then delivered a precise strike that left Billy limp but breathing. Wade and his remaining men found Billy minutes later, after Otis had disappeared back into the shadows. The cable had cut deep into Billy's leg, and he'd need medical attention. They struggled to get him down, cursing and panicking. "Fall back," Wade finally ordered, helping carry his unconscious brother to the truck. "Fall back now." Otis watched them retreat through his thermal scope, their heat signatures bright against the cool night. Their trucks peeled out on the gravel road, leaving behind weapons, wounded pride, and enough evidence to bury them legally. Standing in the shadows of his burning barn, Otis's silhouette remained calm and still. His breathing was steady, heart rate normal, just like countless operations in his past life. He clicked his radio 3 times, signaling all clear to Shirley. The fire department's sirens wailed in the distance, finally responding to the blaze. Otis knew the police would arrive conveniently late, but that didn't matter anymore. The game had changed, and his opponents had no idea who they were really dealing with. The morning sun crept over the horizon, casting long shadows across Otis's farm. Yellow police tape fluttered around the smoldering remains of the barn, and news vans had already gathered at the property line like vultures. Inside their kitchen, Otis and Shirley watched the local Channel 8 news broadcast with growing disbelief. The footage showed only carefully selected clips. Billy Grissom hanging from the cable, injured gang members being loaded into ambulances, and Wade's tearful interview. "We were just checking on old Freeman," Wade's voice cracked perfectly on camera. "Heard some strange noises, wanted to make sure he was okay. Then, out of nowhere, violence, military-grade weapons. Could have killed my brother." Shirley's coffee cup hit the table hard. "They edited out the firebombs, the racist graffiti, everything." "Course they did," Otis replied, his calm voice masking deep anger. "Channel 8's owned by Wade's cousin," the reporter's voice continued. "Sources say Otis Freeman, a local farmer with suspected militant ties, may have been stockpiling weapons. Concerned citizens gathered to investigate suspicious activity when they were allegedly attacked with excessive force." Dre burst through the screen door, out of breath. "Y'all seeing this? They're saying you assaulted them." "It's all over social media, too." Shirley pulled out her phone, scrolling through local Facebook groups. Post after post showed the same doctored clips, accompanied by angry comments. "Dangerous militant needs to be locked up. This is what happens when they take our land. Sheriff needs to do something." "We have the real footage," Otis said, nodding toward his security cameras. "Shows everything." "Already downloaded it," Shirley replied. "But Channel 8 won't air it. And look at this. The Grissom family's lawyer is calling for your arrest." Outside, more news vans arrived. Reporters shouted questions through the fence, their cameras pointed like weapons. A small crowd had gathered too, mostly white faces wearing hostile expressions. Dre paced the kitchen. "This ain't right. We got to show people what really happened." "Working on it," Shirley said, typing rapidly on her laptop. "Trying to reach some national outlets, but these local stations are painting Otis as some kind of black militant terrorist." Otis stood, his massive frame blocking the morning light through the window. "Need to talk to Mike," he said quietly. "Sheriff Latimer?" Dre scoffed. "Man, he's probably in Wade's pocket, too." "Maybe," Otis replied, But he knows me. 20 years of being neighbors counts for something. Shirley touched his arm. Be careful. This isn't just about the farm anymore. The drive into town felt different. People who normally waved now turned away. Outside the diner, a group of men glared as Otis's truck passed. The fear his night of defense had instilled was being transformed into anger by Wade's media manipulation. The sheriff's office was busy. Deputies whispered and stared as Otis walked in. His size normally commanded respect, but today it seemed to make people nervous, like his mere presence confirmed their worst suspicions. Sheriff Mike Latimer's office door was open. The old lawman sat behind his desk, looking tired and uncomfortable as Otis filled the doorway. "Come in, Otis," Mike said quietly. "Close the door." Otis sat, the chair creaking under his weight. For a moment, neither man spoke. "Got quite a situation here," Mike finally said, not meeting Otis's eyes. "You know what really happened, Mike. What I know and what I can prove are different things." The sheriff shuffled some papers. "Wade's got 3 witnesses saying you attacked them unprovoked. Got medical bills, property damage. They burned my barn." Otis's voice remained level. "Killed my livestock. Tried to run me off my land. Any proof?" "Security footage. Clear as day." Mike finally looked up, his face pained. "Footage gets corrupted. Witnesses change their minds. You know how things work here." "Thought you were different, Mike." The sheriff stood, pacing behind his desk. "I got the county commissioner breathing down my neck. Got citizens demanding action. Wade's family owns half the businesses in town. And that makes it right? Makes it complicated," Mike snapped. Then, softer. "I got no choice, Otis. There's a warrant for your arrest. Assault, excessive force, suspected weapons violations." Otis didn't move. "That? How it's gonna be? Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Mike's hand drifted toward his gun. "Come in quiet. We'll sort this out proper." Through the office window, Otis could see Shirley and Dre arriving in her car. They'd followed him, worried. Smart. "Think I'll decline," Otis said, standing slowly. "You want me? You'll need to find me first." "Don't do this," Mike pleaded. "System works if you work with it." "System's broken, Mike. Has been for a long time." Otis turned to leave. "You just been pretending not to notice." "Otis!" Mike called after him. "You leave now. There's no going back." But Otis was already moving through the station, his size parting deputies like water. None made a move to stop him. They'd seen what happened to Wade's gang. Outside, Shirley and Dre rushed to meet him. "They're really charging you?" Dre asked, disbelief in his voice. "Get in the car," Otis replied calmly. "Both of you. We got work to do." Through the station window, Sheriff Latimer watched them drive away, his face a mask of conflict and regret. The late afternoon sun filtered through the trees as Otis's truck wound down back roads he'd known since childhood. In the rearview mirror, police lights flashed in the distance, but they were searching main roads, amateur moves that made him shake his head. "They'll check the farm first," Shirley said from the passenger seat, her phone buzzing constantly with messages. "Then your sister's place in Marshall County." "Let them," Otis replied, turning down an unmarked dirt path. "Won't find anything worth finding." Dre sat forward from the back seat. "Where are we heading, Big O?" "Got spots they don't know about. Places I set up years ago." Otis's large hands guided the wheel with surprising gentleness. "Navy taught me more than just fighting." The truck climbed a steep hill, branches scraping the sides. At the top, a small hunting cabin sat nearly invisible among the trees, its weathered wood blending perfectly with the forest. "Pull around back," Shirley instructed. "Less visible from the air if they bring helicopters." Inside, the cabin was sparse, but prepared. Otis moved with purpose, pulling up floorboards to reveal cached supplies: water, food, first aid, and several hard drives. "Your surveillance footage?" Dre asked. Copies, Otis nodded. Originals somewhere safer. Never keep all your intel in one place. Shirley had set up her laptop, using a satellite connection that couldn't be easily traced. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she typed emails to old contacts. Marcus at the ACLU is reviewing the case, she reported. And Reverend Jackson's office called back. They're mobilizing supporters. What about the footage? Dre paced the small cabin. Can't we just put it online? Not yet, Otis replied, checking the windows. Need the right timing. Release it too soon. They'll find ways to discredit it. Police sirens wailed in the distance, then faded. Otis's phone buzzed. A text from a sympathetic deputy warning that roadblocks were going up on county lines. They're pushing the dangerous militant angle hard, Shirley said, reading news updates. Sheriff's office is claiming you have an arsenal hidden on the farm. Only arsenal I got is up here, Otis tapped his temple. And they ain't ready for that. As darkness fell, they moved again. Otis led them through the woods on foot, using night vision gear from his SEAL days. They crossed streams to mask their trail and avoided obvious paths. 2 hours later, they reached another safe house. This one, an abandoned church deep in the woods. Local kids thought it was haunted, which kept them away. Perfect cover. Inside, Otis set up a small command center. Multiple screens showed different camera feeds from around his property. They watched as police searched the farm, Wade Grissom strutting around like he owned the place already. Look at this, Shirley called them over to her laptop. She played a clip from the local news. Townspeople they'd known for years calling Otis dangerous, demanding action. The fear in their eyes seemed real. They actually believe it, Dre said quietly. All these years, they really think you're... They believe what's easier to believe, Otis replied, his voice heavy. Black man defending his land? Must be violent. Must be dangerous. Tales old as the soil we're standing on. He pulled up the real footage on another screen. The images were crystal clear. Wade's gang setting fires, shooting animals, screaming racial slurs. Their attack was methodical, practiced. They'd done this before. Problem is, Shirley said, people see what they expect to see. Even with proof, some won't want to believe they've been supporting the real criminals. Dre slumped against a wall. So what do? We fight smart, Otis replied. Not just with fists or guns. Got to change minds. Show truth so clear they can't deny it. Shirley's phone lit up with responses from her contacts. Legal aid was coming, but slowly. Civil rights organizations were mobilizing supporters. But carefully, one wrong move could make Otis look more dangerous. Got word from Marcus, she said. He's filing emergency motions, but Wade's family has half the judges in their pocket. Going to take time. Outside, an owl hooted. Otis checked the perimeter cameras he'd set up earlier. No movement except wildlife. His training kept him alert but patient. They'll search these woods tomorrow, he said. But they don't know them like I do. Don't know how to track, how to think ahead. What about the rest of the footage? Dre asked. The stuff showing what they did to other farms? Safe, Otis replied. Got evidence going back years. Wade's gang pushing folks off their land, burning them out. Police reports that went nowhere. Testimonies nobody wanted to hear. Shirley touched his arm. We'll make them hear now. Through the church's broken stained glass windows, they could see police lights in the distance. Searching. But they were looking for a threat, a militant, a monster. They weren't ready for the truth. That the real monster had been walking among them all along, wearing a friendly face and a sheriff's badge. Dawn broke over the abandoned church, sunlight filtering through broken stained glass. Dre paced the dusty floor, phone pressed to his ear as he made call after call. Yeah, man, you heard right. Big O needs us, all of us. He listened, nodding. Meet at Jackson's barber shop. 2 hours. Shirley looked up from her laptop. How many coming? Got 15 confirmed. Marcus from the VFW's bringing more vets. Dre's eyes lit up. People remember what the Grissams did to their families. They've been waiting for a chance to stand up. Otis sat cleaning his night vision gear, his large frame somehow making the ancient pew look small. Tell them to be smart. No weapons, no threats. We fight this clean. They know, Dre assured him. We learned from you, Big O. Brain over bullets. By mid-morning, Jackson's barber shop hummed with quiet energy. Young men and women filled every chair, some standing against walls. Veterans in faded military caps sat beside teenagers in hoodies. All black, all focused on Doc Dre. They think they can chase Big O off his land like they did our parents and grandparents. Dre's voice carried clear passion. But times changed. We got phones. We got cameras. We got truth on our side. Marcus, a Vietnam vet with gray-streaked dreads, stood up. Got 20 more vets ready to show support. Non-violent, but visible. Let them see we ain't backing down. Across town, Shirley worked her own angle. The community center filled with church ladies, teachers, small business owners, people who'd known Otis for decades, now uncertain after the media storm. Look at these photos, Shirley spread them on tables. Images of the Grissom gang's real work. Burned buildings, terrorized families, police reports stamped case closed without investigation. This isn't about one farm. It's about all of us. Mrs. Johnson, who taught 3rd grade, picked up a photo. They burned the Williams place last year. Police said it was electrical. Because that's what the Grissams told them to say. Shirley's voice was steel-wrapped in silk. But we have proof now. Real proof. Back in the church hideout, Otis monitored police band radio. Search patterns were sloppy. They didn't expect him to stay close. A rookie mistake he'd seen too often in the field. His burner phone buzzed. A text from Deputy Rodriguez. Sheriff wants meeting. Neutral ground. Says it's important. Otis showed Shirley the message when she returned. She frowned. Could be a trap. Could be. But Rodriguez is solid. His boy served with SEALs in Afghanistan. They arranged the meet carefully. Rodriguez would talk to Shirley in the grocery store parking lot in full view of security cameras. No direct contact with Otis. Evening shadows stretched long when Shirley pulled in. Rodriguez looked nervous, constantly scanning the lot. Sheriff's scared, he said quietly, pretending to check her tail light. Wade's pushing him hard, but something's breaking. He knows this went too far. Too far was years ago, Shirley replied. What's his message? Tell Freeman. Tell him the law can't help anymore. Wade's got judges, politicians in his pocket. They're planning something big. Military-grade weapons, outside muscle coming in. Shirley's heart clenched, but her voice stayed steady. Why tell us? Because my daddy saw this before, in Alabama. Saw good people stay quiet, while evil men burned and killed. I took an oath to protect, not to help terrorists. Back at the church, Dre reported on the day's progress. Over 50 people ready to stand publicly with Otis. Dozens more supporting quietly. Local black churches opening food banks for families who might face retaliation. Got some white folks asking to help, too, he added. Miss Sarah from the diner. Doc Peterson. People starting to see the truth. Otis absorbed the information silently. When Shirley delivered the sheriff's warning, he simply nodded. Expected this, he said. Wade's daddy did the same thing in '65. Brought in Klan members from 3 states when the first black family bought land here. But we ain't in '65, Dre insisted. We got numbers now. We got power. Power ain't just in numbers, Otis replied. It's in being ready, being smarter. They expect violence. Give them peace. They expect chaos. Give them order. Shirley opened her laptop, showing social media posts. Support growing, questions being asked. The narrative shifting slowly, but surely. Rally planned for Sunday, she said. Peaceful, professional. Every phone recording, every moment documented. Let them try to spin that. Through the broken windows, they could see police lights still searching. But now other lights moved in the darkness too. Cars driving slow past the Grissom properties, phones recording. Community patrols watching the watchers. The war wasn't just coming. It was already here, being fought with cameras instead of guns, truth instead of terror. And somewhere in the county, a sheriff sat in his office, staring at photos of old friends turned terrorists, wondering if he had the strength to finally do what was right. Wade Grissom's hands shook as he loaded shells into his new AR-15. 5 more identical rifles lay on the table, price tags still attached. Around his garage, 24 men checked weapons and gear, their faces hard with hate and fear. "They're making us look weak," Wade spat. "That fat old man's got the whole county laughing at us." Jimmy Carter, fresh out of state prison with Nazi tattoos on his neck, chambered around. "Ain't nobody gonna laugh after tonight. Got 10 more boys coming from Rayburn County. Real serious players." The garage reeked of gun oil and cheap beer. Maps of Otis's farm covered one wall, marked with red X's and arrows. Wade had been obsessing over them for days, trying to find weak spots. "Remember," he told the group, "we go in heavy this time. No more playing nice. Anyone gets in our way." He drew a finger across his throat. Outside, more trucks pulled up. Men with prison muscles and dead eyes climbed out, carrying duffel bags that clinked with metal. Some wore motorcycle club patches. Others had white supremacist tattoos visible under rolled sleeves. "Brought some special toys," one said, unzipping his bag. Inside lay homemade explosives, the kind used to blow bank vaults. "This'll open up that farmhouse real quick." Meanwhile, at the Freeman farm, Otis worked methodically in the pre-dawn light. His large frame moved with surprising grace as he set up defensive positions. Years of SEAL training guided every decision. "Channel their movement here," he explained to Dre, pointing to a narrow path between buildings. "Force them to bunch up. Make them nervous." Dre helped string razor wire in the tall grass, carefully concealing it. "Like a funnel?" "Exactly. When people panic, they run where you want them to." Otis checked the wire's tension. Not to kill, just to control. They'd transformed the farm over several days. Trenches filled with sharpened stakes lay hidden under loose hay. Motion sensors connected to floodlights waited in the shadows. Every approach had been mapped and prepared. "These holes," Otis pointed to seemingly random depressions, "will fill with water when they step in. Disorient them, make them doubt every step." Inside the barn, they'd built fortified positions. Bulletproof vests, donated by sympathetic veterans, hung ready. Night vision equipment was tested and placed strategically. "Remember your training," Otis told Dre as they worked. "Stay calm. Think 3 moves ahead. They'll be angry, sloppy. Use that." By afternoon, more defenders arrived quietly. Marcus and his veteran friends moved like ghosts through the farm, adding their own expertise. One rigged old truck batteries to metal fencing, ready to deliver shocking surprises. "Just like Nam," Marcus grinned. "Non-lethal, but they'll sure remember it." Otis had hidden cameras covering every angle, feeding to secure servers off-site. Whatever happened, there would be proof this time. Shirley coordinated with lawyers and media contacts, ready to broadcast any violence. "The perimeter's solid," Dre reported, wiping sweat from his face. "Those first tripwires will alert us before they get within 100 yards. Otis nodded, checking his tactical radio. "Keep the young ones back." veterans on point. Nobody plays hero. They'd converted the old grain silo into a command center, screens showing thermal and night vision feeds. Otis studied the displays, his tactical mind processing every detail. "They'll come from multiple directions," he said. "Try to split our attention." But they don't know about the drainage ditches. The ditches, now fitted with pressure plates and alarm systems, would force attackers into predictable paths. Every route had been considered, every countermeasure carefully planned. As sunset approached, the defenders made final preparations. Medical supplies were staged in protected areas. Escape routes were confirmed and memorized. Nobody spoke about killing, but everyone understood the stakes. "They're bringing explosives," Dre warned, showing intel from sympathetic sources. "Real serious hardware." "Expected that," Otis replied calmly. "That's why we hardened the walls. Concrete and steel plates behind the wood. Let them waste their surprises." The farm had become a fortress, but it didn't look like one. Every defense was hidden, every trap concealed. To casual observers, it still appeared peaceful, exactly as Otis wanted. "Psychological warfare," he explained to the defenders. "Let them think they're in control, then show them how wrong they are." Night fell slowly, bringing cool air and cricket songs. The defenders moved to their positions, communication channels checked and double-checked. In the command center, Otis watched thermal images of wildlife moving through the fields. "Remember," his voice carried quiet authority over the radio, "we're protecting something bigger than just land. We're standing against generations of hatred. Make every action count." The farm waited in pregnant silence, transformed from a peaceful homestead into a carefully prepared battlefield. Not with tanks or artillery, but with the calculated precision of men who understood true combat. Every shadow held purpose. Every innocent-looking feature concealed tactical advantage. They were ready. The only question was, were the Grissoms ready for what they would face? The sun melted into the horizon, painting the farm in deep shadows. Crickets fell silent. In the command center, Otis watched thermal signatures approaching from 3 directions. His breath remained steady, measured. "Contact," Dre whispered through the radio. Multiple vehicles, engines off, rolling silent. Otis's large frame settled into position. Despite his size, decades of training made every movement precise. "Hold positions. Let them commit." The first flashbang exploded near the front gate, its burst temporarily blinding the surveillance cameras. Gunfire erupted immediately after, bullets sparking off metal and splintering wood. Shouts and war cries filled the air as the gang charged forward. "Now they're feeling brave," Otis muttered, switching to night vision. Through the green-tinted view, he counted at least 30 attackers moving in scattered groups. The first group hit the hidden razor wire. Screams pierced the night as sharp metal bit through jeans and boots. Those behind stumbled over their fallen friends, creating chaos in their ranks. "South group's in the funnel," Marcus reported calmly. "Triggering Sector 2. Floodlights blazed to life, blinding the attackers who had removed night vision gear after using flashbangs. More screams as men stumbled into the water-filled holes, their weapons splashing uselessly. Otis moved silently despite his weight, years of SEAL training evident in every step. He circled behind 3 men, trying to set up a heavy machine gun. His large hands found precise pressure points. One by one, they dropped unconsciously. "Behind you!" Dre's warning came just as a baseball bat swung at Otis's head. Otis turned, slower than in his youth but still efficiently. The bat connected with his shoulder, painful but not disabling. He grabbed the attacker's wrist, twisted, and used the man's momentum to throw him face first into a tractor tire. The crack of a nose breaking was lost in the general chaos. More explosions rocked the farmhouse as the gang used their heavier weapons. But the reinforced walls held, absorbing the blasts while protecting the defenders inside. "They're getting frustrated," Otis observed, breathing heavily from exertion. Sweat soaked his shirt despite the cool night air. "Watch for mistakes." A group of attackers rushed the barn, thinking they'd found a weak point. They triggered the electrified fence section. Bodies convulsed and fell, their weapons clattering away. Those behind retreated in panic, firing wildly into the darkness. Otis felt the strain in his joints as he climbed to a higher position. Age and weight made every movement harder than it used to be. But his mind remained sharp, calculating angles and timing with military precision. Through his scope, he spotted Wade Grissom directing men toward the grain silo. The gang leader's face was contorted with rage and fear, realizing his attack was falling apart. "They're pushing east," Otis warned his defenders. "Prepare for—" A bullet grazed his arm, hot pain slicing through muscle. Otis rolled instantly, returning fire with controlled bursts. Two attackers fell, clutching non-lethal wounds to legs and shoulders. "Big O, you hit?" Dre's voice crackled with concern. "Flesh wound," Otis grunted, pressing a hand against the bleeding. "Stay focused." The gang's attack deteriorated into confusion. Their coordinated assault plan collapsed against defenses they couldn't see or understand. Men fired at shadows, jumped at noises, and fell into trap after trap. Otis moved again, his injured arm throbbing but still functional. He caught a glimpse of his reflection in a window, a large man moving with deadly purpose, blood darkening his sleeve. Not the soft target the gang had expected. "West side clear," Marcus reported. "They're falling back." "South clear," another defender added. 4 captured, minor injuries. Otis watched through thermal as heat signatures retreated into the darkness. Angry shouts and cursing filled the air as the gang dragged their wounded away. Their first wave had accomplished nothing except revealing their own weaknesses. "Defensive positions," Otis ordered, checking his wound. The bullet had carved a deep groove in his bicep. Painful, but not serious. "They'll regroup and try again." The farm fell quiet, except for moans from injured attackers who couldn't retreat. Defenders moved carefully to secure them, providing basic medical aid while zip-tying their hands. Dre appeared at Otis's side with a first aid kit. "Let me look at that arm." Otis allowed the younger man to clean and bandage the wound, his eyes never leaving the thermal displays. The attack had lasted less than 30 minutes, but the night was far from over. "They didn't expect us to be ready," Dre said, taping the bandage in place. "They never do," Otis replied, his breathing returning to its usual calm rhythm. "Pride blinds them, makes them vulnerable." Around the farm, defenders reset traps and checked ammunition. The first wave had been repelled, but everyone knew Wade Grissom wouldn't accept defeat easily. The real battle was still to come. The darkness thickened like tar as clouds blocked the moon. Inside the farmhouse, Otis pressed a cold compress against his injured arm while studying the thermal displays. Red and orange blobs gathered at the tree line, reorganizing. "They're coming back," Dre whispered, checking his zip ties and reinforced gloves. "Bigger push this time." Otis nodded, his bulk shifting smoothly as he moved to a better position. "They'll target the house directly. Pride's hurt now." "Makes men stupid!" The first Molotov cocktail crashed through a window, flames spreading across the reinforced floor. More followed, turning the night into flickering orange hell. Smoke filled the air as Wade's voice boomed through a megaphone. "Burn them out! No mercy for race traitors!" Otis activated the sprinkler system, dousing most fires before they could spread. But the attack was just beginning. Sledgehammers crashed against the reinforced door, while others tried breaking through windows. "Basement positions," Otis ordered calmly. "Let them think they're winning." The defenders retreated downstairs as the gang finally breached the entrance. Heavy boots thundered above, accompanied by whoops of victory. The sound of furniture being smashed and racial slurs being spray-painted on walls echoed through the house. "Now," Otis whispered. Dre hit the switches. The house plunged into total darkness as the power cut out. Night vision goggles activated, giving the defenders perfect sight, while the attackers stumbled blind. Otis moved like a ghost despite his size, decades of SEAL training evident in every silent step. He caught the first attacker in a sleeper hold, lowering the unconscious body without a sound. Two more fell before anyone realized they weren't alone. "What the hell?" Someone fired wildly, muzzle flashes destroying their night vision. The shots went wide, embedding in reinforced walls. Dre struck next, his younger body flowing through the darkness. He caught one man with a throat punch, another with a precise knee strike. Bodies dropped as panic spread through the gang's ranks. Otis felt his injured arm protesting as he grappled with a larger attacker. The man's elbow caught his ribs, forcing a grunt of pain. But Otis's massive hands locked around the attacker's wrist, twisting until bones cracked. The man screamed, stumbling into his companions. "They're everywhere!" Terror filled the voices now. More wild shots, more missing. Otis drove his fist into a kidney, dropped another with a leg sweep. His breath came harder, sweat soaking his shirt. Age and weight slowed him, but experience made every move count. A lucky punch caught his jaw, making him stumble. The attacker pressed forward, swinging wildly. Otis absorbed another hit, then caught the man's arm. The floor shook as he slammed the attacker down, following with a precise strike to the solar plexus. "Dre, status?" he called softly. "6 down here," Dre responded. "Getting sloppy now." Scared. Through his night vision, Otis spotted Wade Grissom trying to rally his men. The gang leader had found one of Otis's farm cats, holding it by the scruff while pressing a knife against its throat. "Come out, you big black bastard," Wade screamed, "or I start sending pieces of this cat to your wife." The hidden cameras caught everything. Wade's contorted face, the racial slurs, the animal cruelty, perfect evidence of his true nature. Otis moved like liquid shadow, years of close-quarters combat training taking over. His large hand clamped around Wade's wrist, squeezing pressure points until the knife clattered away. The cat leaped free as Wade howled in pain and rage. "You're on camera," Otis whispered in Wade's ear. "Everything, every word, every threat." Wade tried to break free, but Otis's weight and power held him easily. The gang leader's struggles grew desperate as he realized his mistake. "You can't prove nothing." "Already have." Otis applied more pressure, making Wade gasp. "Run home now, while you can still walk." He released Wade with a push, sending him staggering into his remaining men. Through night vision, Otis watched them retreat in chaos, dragging their wounded and leaving weapons behind. As they fled, phone lights appeared at the farm's edge. Community members had gathered, recording everything. Phones captured Wade's bloody face, his racist screams, his humiliated retreat. "Word spreading," Dre reported, checking zip-tied prisoners. "People are sharing the videos already. Calling you a hero." Otis just grunted, feeling every bruise and ache. His injured arm throbbed worse now, and his ribs protested each breath. But satisfaction filled him as he watched the gang's taillights disappear into the darkness. The defenders began securing the house, treating minor wounds and documenting damage. Outside, the crowd grew larger. Black and brown faces filled with pride and anger, phones raised to record everything. "They'll be back," Dre said, helping Otis rebandage his arm. "Let them come," Otis replied calmly. "Pride's expensive." Tonight's lesson cost them plenty. The sun crept over the horizon, painting the farm's battle scars in harsh morning light. Otis sat heavily at his kitchen table, holding an ice pack to his swollen jaw while Shirley cleaned the gash on his arm. Empty shell casings and broken glass littered the floor around them. "Hold still," Shirley muttered, dabbing antiseptic that made him wince. "These need stitches, Otis." "Later," he replied, watching Dre pace near the window. The young man's knuckles were raw, his clothes still dusty from the fight. Red and blue lights suddenly flooded the kitchen. 3 police cruisers rolled up the driveway, followed by Sheriff Latimer's personal vehicle. Otis didn't move, just kept holding the ice pack while officers surrounded the house. "Freeman!" Latimer's voice boomed through a megaphone. "Come out with your hands visible." Shirley's fingers tightened on Otis's shoulder. "This isn't right. We have evidence of their attack." "Evidence doesn't matter much right now," Otis said quietly, standing with effort. His ribs protested every movement. "Dre, stay back. Don't give them any excuse." Otis walked slowly to the door, hands raised. Morning sunlight caught his wedding ring as he stepped onto the porch. 6 officers had weapons drawn, faces hard with rehearsed fear. "On your knees!" someone shouted. "Do it now!" "He's injured," Shirley called from the doorway. "Let him move slow." Otis carefully lowered his bulk to the wooden boards, keeping his hands visible. Sheriff Latimer approached with handcuffs, while other officers covered him. The sheriff's eyes wouldn't meet his. "Otis Freeman, you're under arrest for aggravated assault, false imprisonment, and criminal vigilantism," Latimer recited mechanically. The cuffs bit into Otis's wrists. "You have the right to remain silent. This is wrong, and you know it." Shirley's lawyer voice cut through the morning air. "We have video of Wade Grissom's gang attacking us. They fired first. They threatened lives. Ma'am, step back inside or you'll be arrested too." An officer moved to block her view. Dre's angry voice carried from inside. "They're arresting him for defending his own home? While those racist pieces of scum—" "Quiet," Otis commanded, his deep voice carrying authority even on his knees. "Shirley, call Marcus at the VA. Dre, stay calm and record everything." They hauled him up roughly, ignoring his grunt of pain as they guided him toward a cruiser. His neighbors were gathering at the property line, phones raised, faces shocked and angry. Some called his name. Others hurled accusations at the police. Through the cruiser's window, Otis watched his farm recede. The morning sun caught the scorch marks on his barn, the bullet holes in his walls, the spray-painted slurs they hadn't had time to clean. His life's work, scarred by hatred, but still standing. The jail intake was deliberately slow. They made him wait in holding while his injuries throbbed, ignoring Shirley's calls about medical attention. Finally, a bored nurse glanced at his arm and declared him fine. "Cell Block C," the guard announced, leading him down a dim corridor. "Protective custody, since you're so worried about racial violence." The cell was bare concrete and steel, barely wide enough for his frame. A thin mattress, a steel toilet, a small sink. The door clanged shut with echoing finality. Otis sat carefully on the bed, feeling every bruise and strain from the night's fighting. Down the block, someone was sobbing. Others called out random threats and comments. He closed his eyes, controlling his breathing like he'd learned in SEAL training. Hours crept by. Through the small window, he watched the sun climb higher. No word from Shirley, no lawyer, just the endless institutional noise of gates, shoes on concrete, radios crackling. Finally, a guard appeared. "Phone call." Otis rose stiffly, following to the phone bank. Shirley's voice was tight with controlled fear when she answered. "They came to the house," she said without preamble. "2 men, claiming to be building inspectors, said they'd received complaints about code violations." "Were they?" Otis kept his voice level. "No, I saw their truck at Wade's garage yesterday. They took pictures, made threats about condemning the property. Said things would go easier if I convinced you to be reasonable about the land. Anger heated Otis's chest, but his voice remained calm. Are you safe? Dre's here. Some veterans from your PTSD group too. But Otis? She hesitated. The footage from our security cameras is gone. Someone hacked the cloud storage. The physical drives are missing. Otis pressed his forehead against the cold concrete wall. All their evidence erased. Just like that. The lawyers still coming? He asked. Yes, but... Shirley's voice cracked slightly. They're pushing for federal charges now, claiming you used military tactics against civilians. They're painting you as a trained killer who overreacted to local youth causing mischief. Otis absorbed this, feeling the weight of systematic injustice pressing down like his cell's low ceiling. Everything they'd built, everything they'd fought for, balanced on a knife's edge. Stay strong, he said softly. Truth will out. I love you, Shirley whispered. The line went dead. Back in his cell, Otis lay on the thin mattress, staring at gray walls. His body ached, but his mind was clear. They'd planned for this, prepared for the system's pushback. Now it was time to trust in the foundations they'd laid. Outside his window, a siren wailed in the distance. Inside his cell, Otis began his familiar meditation routine, gathering strength for whatever came next. 5 days into Otis's imprisonment, Dre hunched over Shirley's kitchen table, surrounded by laptops and hard drives. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but determination kept him alert. Found another backup, he announced, fingers flying across the keyboard. They didn't know about the micro SD cards in the barn cameras. Shirley leaned over his shoulder, her reading glasses perched on her nose. How much footage? Everything. The firebombs, the shootings, Wade's crew torturing those horses. Dre's voice caught with anger. It's all here in HD. Send it to everyone on the list, Shirley directed, checking her phone. Every news outlet, every civil rights organization, every veterans group. And encrypt copies for our lawyers. Dre nodded, starting the uploads, already trending on Twitter. Free Otis Freeman and Justice for Freeman's Farm are picking up steam. Outside, cars lined their street as supporters gathered with signs. The constant honking of encouragement, mixed with occasional shouts of hate from passing trucks. Local police watched from patrol cars, but kept their distance. In his cell, Otis did push-ups despite his injuries, keeping his body and mind strong. A Latino corrections officer named Rodriguez watched through the bars. My son was a SEAL too, Rodriguez said quietly. Force Recon died in Kandahar. Otis stood slowly, respecting the shared loss. I'm sorry, brother. Saw the footage this morning of what those men did to your farm. Rodriguez's jaw tightened. Ain't right. What's happening to you? Before Otis could respond, shouts erupted from the prison yard. Inmates pressed against windows, pointing at a TV in the guard station. Breaking news banners flashed across the screen. The footage played in brutal clarity. Wade Grissom's gang throwing Molotov cocktails, shooting livestock, screaming racial slurs as they attacked the farmhouse. Then Otis's careful defense, using minimal force to protect his home. Holy cow, someone whispered. Big man's innocent. Rodriguez watched the coverage, his expression hardening. Whole countries seeing this now. Outside the jail, the protest crowd swelled. Veterans in uniform stood shoulder to shoulder with young activists. Signs demanded justice and freedom for Otis. News vans clogged the streets. In her office, Shirley fielded endless calls from media and civil rights lawyers. Yes, we have more footage. No, Mr. Freeman never fired a shot. Yes, we're filing federal civil rights charges against the county. Dre coordinated with protest organizers, his voice strong and clear. Keep it peaceful but loud. Let them know we're not backing down." The story exploded across social media. Celebrities shared the footage. Politicians demanded investigations. Military veterans groups issued statements supporting Otis. Inside the jail, the mood shifted. Guards whispered in corners. Inmates nodded respectfully at Otis during yard time. Even the hostile ones kept their distance, watching him with new understanding. Rodriguez brought him a fresh uniform and extra food. Administration's getting nervous. Phones ringing off the hook. Otis accepted the items with quiet dignity. "Thank you, brother." In the sheriff's office, Latimer watched the protests grow through his window. His phone buzzed constantly with calls from the FBI and Justice Department. On his desk, resignation papers waited for his signature. Back at the farm, Shirley addressed a crowd of supporters, her voice carrying over the microphone. "This isn't just about Otis. This is about every American's right to defend their home, regardless of their race." The crowd roared approval. Dre stood beside her, fist raised. Cameras flashed. More cars arrived every minute. National news crews set up live shots. Anchors described the scene. A remarkable showing of community support here in rural Georgia, as citizens demand justice for decorated Navy SEAL veteran Otis Freeman. In his cell, Otis sat cross-legged on his bed, eyes closed in meditation. The familiar prison sounds were now punctuated by chants from outside. "Free Otis! Free Otis!" Rodriguez appeared again, jingling his keys. "Got some visitors, Freeman." "Important ones." Otis opened his eyes, face calm. Through his window, he could see the growing crowd, the signs, the flags. His community standing together, refusing to let injustice win. The chants grew louder, echoing through the jail's concrete corridors. "No justice, no peace. Free Otis Freeman." Hope spread like sunrise through the darkness of his cell. Dawn broke over the county with the whump-whump of helicopter rotors. Black FBI vehicles rolled through morning fog, converging on 3 locations simultaneously. At the Grissom family compound, Wade jolted awake to the crash of his front door being breached. "FBI! On the ground! Now!" Tactical teams swept through rooms as Wade scrambled for a shotgun. He barely touched it before being tackled by 2 agents. His face hit the wooden floor hard. "Wade Grissom, you're under arrest for federal hate crimes, attempted murder, arson, and conspiracy," an agent announced, securing handcuffs with practiced efficiency. Across town, similar scenes played out at other gang members' homes. The element of surprise was total. Years of built-up arrogance crumbled in minutes under the weight of federal authority. At the sheriff's office, FBI agents boxed evidence and carried out computers. Deputies stood aside, avoiding eye contact as their colleagues were led away in cuffs. Internal affairs investigators discovered deleted footage, doctored reports, and years of covered-up hate crimes. Sheriff Latimer sat alone in his office, staring at photos on his wall. Decades of service reduced to shame. His hands trembled as he removed his badge. A knock at his door made him flinch. "Come in," he said hoarsely. 2 FBI agents entered, faces stern. "Sheriff, we need to discuss the extent of your department's involvement with the Grissom organization." Latimer nodded slowly. "I'll tell you everything. Just let me do this first." He picked up his resignation letter, signing it with finality. At the county jail, Otis packed his few belongings as Rodriguez unlocked his cell. "Your release papers are signed. You're a free man." Otis emerged into bright sunshine and deafening cheers. Hundreds of supporters lined the street. Shirley ran to embrace him, tears streaming down her face. Dre stood nearby, grinning broadly. "The FBI got them all," Shirley whispered. "Every last one." News cameras captured the moment as Otis held his wife. His quiet dignity spoke volumes. Veterans in the crowd saluted. Young activists chanted his name. Across town, Wade Grissom sat in federal custody, his swagger gone. FBI investigators laid out evidence, surveillance footage, financial records, witness statements, encrypted messages. The depth of his organization's crimes stunned even hardened agents. "You're looking at 25 to life minimum," the lead investigator said. "Federal hate crime charges alone, Carrie." "I want a lawyer," Wade muttered, but his voice shook. In the sheriff's department parking lot, Mike Latimer emptied his cruiser, placing his equipment in a cardboard box. Young deputies watched silently as their former boss walked to his pickup truck. He paused, looking back at the building where he'd worked for 40 years. "I should have done better," he said to no one in particular. Then he drove away, leaving his shame behind. At the federal courthouse, Wade and his associates shuffled in wearing orange jumpsuits and chains. Their arraignment drew national media. Civil rights leaders filled the gallery. The charges took 10 minutes to read. "How do you plead?" the judge asked. Wade's lawyer spoke. "Not guilty, Your Honor." Murmurs filled the courtroom. The prosecutor stood, holding up a thick file. "The government has overwhelming evidence, including video footage, DNA, ballistics, and multiple witness statements. We'll be seeking maximum sentences." In the gallery, Otis watched calmly. The men who'd tried to destroy him now looked small, diminished. Their hatred had cost them everything. Outside, reporters swarmed for comments. Wade's swagger had vanished, replaced by fear, as federal marshals led him to a waiting vehicle. Photographers captured his fallen expression, the face of defeat. At the Freeman farm, the community gathered to help rebuild. Veterans groups repaired the burned barn. Local youth painted over racist graffiti. The land was healing, like its owner. Dre supervised young volunteers, his leadership growing stronger each day. "This is what justice looks like," he told them. "Not revenge, justice." FBI agents continued combing through sheriff's department records, uncovering years of corruption. Deputies came forward with testimonies of covered-up crimes, falsified reports, and systematic racism. In Washington, civil rights organizations cited the Freeman case as proof of ongoing rural terrorism against black landowners. Congressional hearings were scheduled. New legislation was drafted. The local news station that had smeared Otis issued a formal retraction and apology. Their biased coverage became a case study in media ethics classes. At the Federal Detention Center, Wade Grissom stared at concrete walls, his empire crumbling. Other inmates avoided him. His name became synonymous with failure. Sheriff Latimer's resignation made national news. Editorial pages debated the role of law enforcement in perpetuating systemic racism. Police reform activists cited the case in their campaigns. Federal prosecutors built an airtight case, methodically documenting every crime, every cover-up, every act of hatred. The evidence filled dozens of boxes. Justice ground forward, slow but unstoppable. Otis Freeman walked through his front gate, each step deliberate and measured. The morning sun cast long shadows across his property, where hundreds of supporters had gathered. Hand-painted signs bobbed above the crowd. "Justice for Freeman Farm" and "Stand with Big O." Shirley squeezed his hand tight as they made their way through the cheering crowd. Veterans in their service caps stood at attention. Young activists who'd rallied behind his cause wiped tears from their eyes. Local farmers, both black and white, nodded respectfully. "Welcome home, brother," called out James Washington, president of the Black Farmers Association. He stepped forward to embrace Otis. "Your stand here? It meant something, changed things." Dre pushed through the crowd, leading a group of young men carrying lumber and tools. "We're ready when you are, Big O," he said, gesturing toward the charred remains of the barn. "Time to rebuild." Otis surveyed the damage with steady eyes. Blackened beams reached toward the sky like broken fingers. Bullet holes pocked the remaining walls, but the foundation stood firm, just like him. "Let's get to work," Otis said simply. The crowd organized itself naturally. Veterans formed work crews. Church ladies set up food tables. Children cleared debris. The sound of hammers and saws filled the air where gunfire had echoed just weeks before. Reverend Marshall led a prayer circle near the old oak tree. "This land," he intoned, "was bought with the sweat and blood of freed slaves. Today we reclaim it, not just for Brother Freeman, but for all who believe in justice." Shirley worked the crowd, introducing Otis to civil rights lawyers who'd flown in from across the country. "We're announcing something big," she told him with a smile. "Something to protect other farmers like you." By midday, the barn's new frame had taken shape. Otis worked alongside everyone else, his large hands steady on each beam. Young men watched in awe as he demonstrated proper technique, his quiet strength now a source of inspiration rather than fear. "My granddaddy built the original barn," Otis told them during a water break. "Did it right after buying this land in 1889. They tried to run him off, too." He wiped his brow. "But Freeman men? We don't run." News crews captured the rebuilding effort. Reporters interviewed community members about the changes sweeping through the county. The FBI investigation had exposed decades of corruption. Reform was coming to local law enforcement. White supremacist groups were scattering like roaches in sunlight. "Mr. Freeman," a young reporter asked, "do you feel vindicated?" Otis considered the question while watching Dre lead a roofing team. "This ain't about vindication," he replied. "It's about standing your ground, teaching the next generation they don't have to accept hatred." By late afternoon, supporters had erected a temporary stage near the new barn. Civil rights leaders and legal experts gathered as Shirley took the microphone. "Today, we're announcing the formation of the Rural Legacy Protection Trust," she declared, "a legal foundation dedicated to defending minority landowners from discrimination, intimidation, and illegal seizure." Applause rolled across the property. Otis stood quietly beside his wife as she detailed the trust's mission. Major civil rights organizations had pledged support. Law firms offered pro bono services. The Freeman case would become a template for fighting rural terrorism. "My husband taught us all something," Shirley continued. "He showed us that one person standing firm can inspire a community to rise. That justice may be slow, but it comes to those who persist." The new barn gleamed in the setting sun, its fresh wood a stark contrast to the weathered buildings around it. Children played tag between support posts while their parents shared food and stories. The property hummed with life and purpose. Dre found Otis inspecting the barn's interior. "Strong bones," the young man said. "Built to last." "Like everything worth having," Otis replied. They stood in comfortable silence, master and student, watching shadows lengthen across the fresh-laid floorboards. Through the open doors, they could see families lingering on the lawn, reluctant to leave this moment of triumph. "You changed things, Big O," Dre said softly. "Changed me. Showed us all what real strength looks like." Otis placed a heavy hand on the young man's shoulder. Around them, the new barn settled into its foundation. Each beam and board a testament to community, resilience, and the power of standing one's ground. The property that had seen so much violence now vibrated with hope. Children who'd hidden from gunfire played freely. Families who'd watched in fear now broke bread together. The land itself seemed to breathe easier, as if shaking off old shadows. Supporters began hanging strings of lights along the barn's facade, transforming the structure into a beacon visible from the main road. The warm glow drew more neighbors, turning the rebuilding into an impromptu celebration of community. Local farmers brought produce from their fields. Church kitchens contributed hot dishes. Musicians set up near the oak tree, filling the evening with gospel and blues. The property that had been a battlefield became a gathering place, a symbol of transformation. 3 months had passed since the rebuilding. The autumn sun hung low in the afternoon sky as Otis Freeman walked the fields with a group of young people trailing behind him. His large frame moved with purpose, stopping occasionally to demonstrate proper techniques for soil testing and crop rotation. "See here," he said, crouching down to scoop up a handful of dark earth. "Good soil tells you its secrets. You just got to know how to listen." Dre stood at his shoulder, watching intently as the older man let the dirt sift through his fingers. Behind them, 6 teenagers from the neighborhood leaned in closer, their faces serious with concentration. They'd been coming to the farm 3 times a week since summer, drawn by stories of the man who'd stood against the Grissom gang. "The land teaches patience," Otis continued, his voice carrying the same quiet authority that had commanded SEAL teams decades ago. "Can't rush what needs time to grow." The farm had flourished since the violence. New fencing gleamed in the sunlight. The rebuilt barn housed state-of-the-art equipment, funded by supporters who'd rallied to the cause. But more importantly, the property had become a gathering place for young people seeking direction. "Mr. Freeman," called out Marcus, one of the younger boys, "is it true you took down 3 men at once that night?" Otis straightened slowly, brushing dirt from his overalls. "We don't focus on the fighting," he said firmly. "That was about survival. This here?" He gestured to the rich farmland around them. "This is about living." Dre nodded, understanding deeper lessons in Otis's words. The older man had been teaching them more than farming, showing them how to channel anger into purpose, how to stand firm without seeking violence. They moved on to the vegetable gardens, where neat rows of fall crops stretched toward the horizon. Otis demonstrated proper harvesting techniques, his large hands surprisingly delicate with tender plants. The teenagers worked alongside him, their movements becoming more confident with each lesson. "My granddaddy used to say, 'Farming's like life,'" Otis told them as they worked. "You get out what you put in. No shortcuts, no excuses." A small boy, maybe 7 years old, watched from the fence line. He'd been showing up lately, drawn by curiosity about the famous farm and its owner. Dre noticed him and walked over, leaving the others with Otis. "You want to learn too, little man?" Dre asked, leaning on the fence. The boy nodded shyly. "Is it true what they say about Mr. Freeman?" Dre watched Otis demonstrate proper tool handling, his movements precise despite his size. The setting sun cast long shadows, making the big man's silhouette seem even more impressive. "People made a lot of assumptions about Big O," Dre said. "Thought because he was quiet, he was weak. Thought because he was big, he was slow." He smiled at the memory of those assumptions being shattered. The boy's eyes widened. "But he's really strong, right? Like a superhero?" Dre shook his head. "Better than that. He's real. Everything he is, he earned. Every skill, every victory came from hard work and staying true to himself." Across the field, Otis was showing the teens how to check plants for disease, his voice carrying faintly on the evening breeze. His students hung on every word, their faces showing the same respect Dre had felt when he first started learning from the older man. "You see how he moves?" Dre asked the boy. "Careful, deliberate. Man spent 20 years as a Navy SEAL before coming back to farm his family's land. Now he's teaching us there's strength in growing things, in building community." The farm's new security systems glinted discreetly in the fading light, cameras and sensors blending seamlessly with the rural landscape. They were rarely needed now. Word had spread about what happened to those who threatened Freeman Farm. Sometimes the strongest people don't look like what you'd expect, Dre continued, watching Otis lead his students toward the barn. They thought he was just an old fat man. But that fat man? That's a lion in farmer's skin. The boy stared at Otis with newfound understanding. The big farmer moved through his land like a guardian, each step sure and purposeful. His students followed, carrying tools and produce, their backs straight with pride. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell tolled the evening hour. Birds called their sunset songs. The farm settled into its peaceful rhythm, strength flowing quiet and deep as an underground stream. Otis raised a hand in greeting as he passed, and the boy waved back hesitantly. His eyes followed the farmer's broad back, seeing now what Dre had learned months ago. That true power often wore humble clothes, that justice could grow as surely as crops in fertile soil. The autumn wind rustled through late corn, carrying the scent of earth and growing things. On Freeman Farm, the day's work continued as it had for generations. Different now, perhaps, but rooted in the same deep truth, that standing your ground meant more than fighting. It meant building something worth defending. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.